Famous hurricanes from the past few decades with names like Sandy, Katrina and Andrew have made headlines and become talking points for years after they happen. Part of the reason for that is the names themselves. One of the main reasons the United States started to give names to these powerful storms was to make it easier to communicate about them both before and after they happen. When a hurricane is coming, information must be passed on to hundreds of stations, ships and coastal locations for safety and tracking. Using a name makes this information much easier to pass on. After the storm, the name also makes it easy to identify which storm is being referred to. It also helps to reduce the possibility of confusion when multiple storms happen in the same season or around the same time. So when did they start naming hurricanes? People have always sought out ways to identify notable storms. In the early 1900s, a storm tore the mast of a boat called the Antya and became known as Antya's storm. Before the naming system, confusing latitude and longitude names were used in the United States. These identifiers were not easily communicated and sometimes caused miscommunications. In the late 17th and early 18th century, in the West Indies, storms were named after the saint day they fell upon. Then in 1953, the United States started using female names for hurricanes to identify them more clearly, and then in 1979 they decided to use alternating male and female names. Now that we know why do hurricanes have names, let's see how they are chosen. Each year, the World Meteorological Organization puts out a list of names from A to Z for the Atlantic hurricanes of that year, with the exception of the letters Q, U, X, Y, and Z. The lists are recycled every 6 years. However, if a hurricane comes along that is powerful and causes a lot of death or destruction, that name gets retired. It just wouldn't be appropriate to have another hurricane called Katrina or Ida. There are 21 possible hurricane names each year. If there are more than 21 named storms that year after using the last name, the World Meteorological Organization now has a list of extra names to be used. In the past, they used to use Greek letters for the excess storms. However, in 2021, the WMO decided this method wasn't very efficient for the purpose of communicating information about storms. They cited several reasons why including several Greek letters sound the same and come one after another, which can be confusing. People living in the Atlantic regions where hurricanes happen may not be familiar with Greek letters. Technically, hurricanes are a type of tropical cyclone that occurs only in the Atlantic Ocean and the eastern Pacific Ocean. However, there are other types of tropical cyclone storms worldwide. The WMO is responsible for naming all these storms. Most of the name lists function similarly. However, in areas with many different countries and languages like the Southwest Indian Ocean, countries can submit names to make sure their culture and language are represented. While we mainly think of hurricanes as occurring in the Atlantic Ocean and affecting the Caribbean islands, the southeastern United States and more infrequently New England, there are also hurricanes in the northeastern Pacific Ocean. Pacific hurricanes mostly affect Mexico's east coast and do not usually hit the continental U.S. This is due to the lack of the Gulf Stream in the Pacific. This warm Atlantic current provides east coast hurricanes with more warm water to move northwards. Warm water is essentially a hurricane's fuel. Pacific hurricanes can only survive further south than Atlantic ones since the ocean is much colder. These storms follow a similar naming convention to Atlantic hurricane names, except that they include names starting with the letters X, Y, and Z. Lastly, can you have a hurricane named after you? No, you cannot have a hurricane named after you. The WMO meets annually to choose the names. The storms are not named after any particular person. They try to choose names that are common in the region that most people would easily be able to say and understand. But if you want, you can always give yourself a hurricane name. Please like this video and show your support by subscribing to the channel. Thank you.